Hey everyone, coming to you from outer space. I hope you're all doing good. Hope you all had a good weekend. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so this week we're looking at the art made from 1918 to 1945, which is also known as the interwar years because it takes place in between two world wars. Some of the terms to know and use include surrealism, automatism, the Bauhaus, abstract expressionism, American regionalism, Harlem Renaissance, the Great Migration, and degenerate art. Some of the questions to consider this week include: how does art convey revolutionary ideology, both regressive and progressive? How did two world wars affect the arts? And in what regions and why did artists create more traditional representational art rather than abstract art? Previously, we learned about several of the modern isms, including Fauvism, Cubism, and Expressionism, as well as Dada. We know that Fauvism is known for their use of wild color. Dada art is known for ready-made objects. And Cubism is known for multiple perspectives. Today, we're going to learn about surrealism, in which familiar things are made strange. We will see how art between the two world wars relates to what came before and how it reflects its historical context. In Europe, this comes about in the flourishing of a style that had been brewing for decades in various guises: surrealism. Surrealism is all about making the familiar strange and revealing hidden desires by drawing upon the unconscious and subconscious, in other words, the realm of dreams, as well as automatism and chance. Like the Dada artists, surrealists also used found objects in their work. This surrealist object was inspired by a conversation between Merritt Oppenheim and Pablo Picasso. Admiring Oppenheim's fur-covered bracelet, Picasso remarked that one could cover anything with fur, to which she responded, "Even this cup and saucer." So she bought a cup, a saucer, and a spoon at a department store and covered them with the fur of a Chinese gazelle. So by doing so, she transformed this everyday object that seems familiar and made it appear very strange. It may also reveal hidden desires, as there may be some sort of sexual pun on the fact that something that is covered in fur is made to be put up to our lips. Again, like Dada, there's the use of found objects. What's the difference, though? Unlike Dada, from which in many ways surrealism sprang, surrealism emphasized the subconscious rather than nihilism or anti-art kind of feelings. Both are irreverent and funny, however. We can also talk about the influence of dreams. The literal translation of surrealism is beyond realism, surréalisme. So, especially in the 1930s, you got to think that this speaks to some kind of unsettling quiet before the storm, especially in Europe. You can sense a little impending doom, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Like in this example, we don't actually see anything there to fear, but maybe it's the lack of a human presence. Maybe it's certain elements that shouldn't be, like clocks should not be melting, ants should not be coming out of a watch, and so on. There's also kind of like unfamiliar elements, like what exactly is that thing on the ground there that has a clock draped over it? Freud and other psychoanalysts used a variety of techniques to bring to the surface the subconscious thoughts of their patients. Surrealists borrowed many of the same techniques to stimulate their own writing and art. The idea is that your subconscious mind is more powerful than your conscious or waking mind. Like Dali, Frida Kahlo created artworks that were painted in a realistic style, yet made familiar things look strange, as if out of a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. This painting by Frida on the right was completed shortly after her divorce from Diego Rivera. This portrait shows Frida's two different personalities. One is the traditional Frida, on the left, with a broken heart, sitting next to an independent, modern-dressed Frida on the right. Some surrealist art is totally abstract, like Juan Miró's composition. He used the tactic of automatism to tap into his subconscious mind. Think of it like when you're on the phone and you start absentmindedly doodling on a sheet of paper. Automatism is a term from psychology, and it refers to involuntary actions and processes not under the control of your conscious mind. So it's drawing without thinking about it. New African American cultural expressions across the urban areas in the Northeast and Midwest United States were affected by the African American Great Migration, of which Harlem, New York was the largest. This epic series by Jacob Lawrence dramatically depicts the post-World War I migration of African American people from the rural South to the industrial North. In visual art, we see an attempt to elevate the cultural and intellectual accomplishments of African Americans, to counter the stereotypes and caricatures that were otherwise presented through minstrel shows and the like. The Harlem Renaissance was far ahead of the rest of America in terms of embracing feminism and queer culture. Gladys Bentley was known to cross-dress. She was a club owner of the Clam House on 133rd Street in Harlem, which was a hub for queer patrons. On the left, you see Langston Hughes, who was an author who was known to be gay, but was not out during his lifetime. And on the right is Josephine Baker, who lived in New York for some time, but then eventually moved to Paris. She came to Paris in 1925 for the International Expo of Modern and Industrial Decorative Arts. Josephine Baker lived in Paris most of the rest of her life. Art Deco is a modern style characterized by a streamlined classicism, geometric and symmetric compositions, and a sleek, machine-aged look. The exhibition was shaped by France's ambition in the years immediately after World War I. Its aim was to establish the preeminence of French taste in luxury goods. French displays dominated the exhibition, and Paris itself was put on show as the most fashionable of cities. In the United States, Art Deco primarily was expressed in architecture. We can see here two examples from New York City. One is the Chrysler Building by William Van Alen from 1930, and the other is the Empire State Building by Shreve, Lamb and Harmon, which was finished in 1931. Art Deco in architecture is known for these, as they're called, setbacks, in which the building sets back or steps back as it gets higher up. Also known for this kind of simplified, streamlined aesthetic. In other words, there's less and different kinds of ornament. And one of those examples would be these protrusions on the Chrysler Building. And they're also known for this kind of machine aesthetic. In other words, geometric motifs and a lot of use of metal, especially steel and also glass. So it gives it this kind of appearance as if it was made by a machine. But by the time that the Empire State Building was constructed, the US had actually already gone into the Great Depression, and it was impossible to fill all of the office spaces in the Empire State Building, so it became known as the Empty State Building. At the Chrysler Building, the distinctive elements of Art Deco include the horizontal black and white stripes between floors, the geometric decoration concentrated at each of the setbacks, the streamlined eagle heads and radiator caps with wings referencing the hallmark Chrysler car ornaments, and above all, the great crown with its 7 layers of crescent setbacks inset with triangular windows.